There's a misconception sometimes that hair transplants are a cure. And once you have a hair transplant, you don't need to do anything else. You don't get results overnight. It's a journey. Us guys, we like to, say that's an alpha male, that's a beta male. And if you were to test them, you could find that the beta male might have the highest levels of testosterone.
Going back to hair loss and thinning hair, DHT is the enemy, right?
Yes, it is.
So what do hair loss experts know that we don't? Hello and welcome back to the Men's Manual podcast. This is XY, the bonus episode of the Men's Manual, where we dig a little bit deeper with one of our experts into the science and facts of the topic that we covered in the main episode. If you guys listened and enjoyed that one, it was on hair loss, and it was with Dan Gregory, the regal gentleman and Manual's very own hair loss specialist, Mr. Mike Yorke. We have him here today, and we are going to go a little bit deeper so you guys can all geek out on some of the science and fact around a topic which is very controversial and very of the times right now. In this episode, Mike and I are going to delve a little bit deeper into some of the causes of hair loss and the treatments that are available out there. Mike, thanks for being here again. How did you find filming and recording that first episode?
It was great fun. There was a lot that was said, great points that were made, and I think, we even touched upon something that a lot of people are concerned about when it comes to hair loss, which is testosterone. I think it's a great place to start because there are a lot of misconceptions about the role testosterone plays in hair loss, and I think it's just down to a little bit of, it's a mixture of things, misinformation, miseducation, and just assumptions that are made overall. I think it's really important to understand first the genesis of hair loss and what causes it. And when we look at hair loss at its basis, it's caused by a particular hormone, which is DHT or dihydrotestosterone. And the key thing is testosterone. It is a derivative of testosterone, a more potent version of testosterone. Now, it's really important to understand DHT is really important to us males.
Yeah.
It's responsible for a lot of male characteristics, the broad shoulders, the deeper voice, the facial hair, and things of that nature. But it's a bit of a double-edged sword when it comes to hair loss because it's also responsible for the shrinking of hair follicles as well. And that's how you start to see hair loss develop over time. So to provide more context, we always men have testosterone to varying levels, and that testosterone that we have is converted into dihydrotestosterone via the enzyme 5-alpha reductase. Okay, and when it does this, DHT behaves in a way that we want it to, giving us the male characteristics. And as I said before, it shrinks the hair follicle. Now, when that shrinkage starts to occur, you will start to see certain things occur in terms of, how your hair looks. So what I find is a lot of men say, when I ask them, how long have you been experiencing your hair loss for?
Yeah.
They'd often say, it's only been about 6 to 12 months. But the truth is, it's probably been a lot longer, but you've just missed the signs. So when your hair follicles start to shrink as a result of the exposure to DHT, the first thing to go is the texture. Okay, so, those who may have hair of a more, curly orientation will start to see that hair become straighter in nature. Then it will start to thin. And some people might even see a loss of pigmentation. And you got to look at it from the point of view of, your hair follicles are a specific shape. And as it gets smaller, it's starting to, in essence, I guess, not to make it sound drastic, but choke the life out of the hair follicle itself. So it doesn't get the necessary nutrients that it needs to grow as it would. And so the hair becomes thinner over time. And another thing that happens is it has an effect on the hair growth cycle. So contrary to popular belief, hair takes ages to grow. And each hair strand can go through a cycle that can range from 2 to 7 years in length. Okay. Now there are various stages of the growth cycle. You've got the initial inception, you've got the growth phase, and then you've got the shedding phase as well. And that's me making it really simple for those who are listening. Now, when your hair is in the growth phase, that's the longest phase of the hair growth cycle. That's where the hair does what we want it to do. But with hair loss and its progressive nature, that growth phase becomes shorter and shorter over time as the hair follicles start to shrink. Hence why, you'll start to see, the hair start to appear thinner, won't have the same texture. And then one thing you'll notice as well, it doesn't seem to grow for as long as it did before you start to see those hairs shed out or shed over time.
So the good news from that, I'm looking at the silver lining here, is less trips to the barbers.
It is less trips to the barbers because obviously your hair's not grown as quickly as it used to.
So there seems to be a common word that keeps coming up when we're talking about hair loss, and that is testosterone. But let's dig a little deeper. Let's try and geek out a little bit about testosterone. So I know it's a hormone, but tell me what it does in the body. Like where's it produced? Like help me sort of understand a little bit more about testosterone and the role that it plays in a man's body.
Okay, cool. So, as you've already said, testosterone is a hormone. In terms of type of hormone, it's what we would refer to as androgen. Okay. For men, it's produced in the testes. Okay. So,
hence testosterone.
So, testosterone. And the role it plays is, I guess if we take it back to when a man is developing, that's when he hits puberty. Mm-hmm. That's when he starts to, release the testosterone. For example, the term
when he goes from a boy to a man.
When your proverbial balls drop, and then that's when you have your testes.
Are they proverbial balls, or do your balls actually drop? Don't they?
Yeah. They actually do drop. So, and then you end up with, that's when it starts to get to work. And then, when you go through puberty, that's when you get the change of voice, the build up of muscle mass, the body hair, the facial hair, all those characteristics you would associate with, that awkward teenager that's now turning from a boy to a man.
Yeah. So. I think I'm still waiting for the facial hair puberty bit to kick.
I think you're doing all right on other fronts, so I don't know. But so that's what it is in terms of a hormone. I think it's really important to understand that depending on who you are, your levels of testosterone will vary. So, for example, if me and you were both to have a blood test today, we will both register, varying levels of testosterone. What's also really important to understand is it doesn't make who ends up on the low end doesn't make that person less of a man. Yeah. Because there's always that misconception that yes, if you have high levels of testosterone, you're Superman, the alpha male. This, that, and the other. I mean, for argument's sake, you could put a bunch of guys in a room, and how us guys, we like to, say that's an alpha male, that's a beta male. And if you were to test them, you could find that the beta male might have the highest levels of testosterone, but it's just his personality is that of a quote unquote beta male. So it's not a great measure of masculinity, but obviously with our definitions of masculinity or the definitions that we've come to over time, it plays a huge role.
So do you think those sort of assumptions and definitions, I know we touched upon this briefly in the last episode, where does that come from? Is that from the media? Is it do you think it's from when we were cavemen and, the bigger, stronger, faster, more vicious, more aggressive males were the ones that survived and could procreate? Do you think it goes as far back as that?
I think it does. And I think when it boils down to it, as human beings, I don't think we ever changed that element of ourselves. We just learned to put a new face on it. Mm-hmm. And we may not be hunting in terms of in the wilderness, but you go out to hunt when you go to work. Being a breadwinner. In essence, that's the new version of it. Yeah. So it's and then media has a part to play, and it's also I guess what we as men see as our
role models.
There we go. That's what I'm looking for. So
we're 80s. We're kind of like 80s kids, right? We grew up watching action movies. And it was Arnie. It was Sly Stallone, Van Damme.
That's the alpha male that we saw. That's the guy with the muscles ripped to shreds. Took no rubbish from nobody. You understand? And then obviously you go into for me, when I think of alpha males, I always think of WWE wrestlers, like a
Yeah.
Stone Cold Steve Austin, like, you know, take no crap from no one, you know, just that's what we saw. And you would assume that guy had high levels of testosterone, whatever.
So we briefly touched on it earlier, and we said that if we lined up a load of guys in the room and we tried to guess who had high testosterone and low testosterone, that we potentially from a blood test or from sight we wouldn't know, but from a blood test we would know.
Yeah.
What sort of for those listening that potentially don't know, and you know I'm in that category as well, what would be considered sort of low testosterone levels, and what would be considered normal? What would be considered high?
Yeah, so it's within a range.
Okay.
So that shows you that there's no golden number
Okay.
that you need to hit. So if my memory serves me correct, anything below 12 nanomoles per liter, I believe, is considered low. And then anything above 23 is considered, you know, high and outside of the range. That's considered normal.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to if you were to, let's say, want to have if you felt you were experiencing symptoms of low testosterone and you went to see your GP, you would have to probably register somewhere a testosterone reading of about 6 or 7 for them to consider.
Oh, wow. So way under
way under.
Yeah.
But if you went for a private service like what Manual offer, then it may be a little higher, but it's down to the judgment of the professional that's reviewing your blood test results.
So now that we're unpacking a little bit on testosterone, let's bring it back to hair loss and how it affects hair loss. So obviously we produce testosterone in the body, and then it's broken down and it has an impact on the hair. Run me through that.
Okay. So I guess one thing I'd probably just course correct a little bit on, it's not necessarily broken down, it's converted. Okay. So you have an enzyme called 5-alpha reductase, which works to convert testosterone into its more potent version, dihydrotestosterone, which is also responsible for a lot of the male characteristics we see, like the muscle mass, facial hair, and things of that nature. But what we've also found is that as well as enhancing the growth of bodily hair, it can have a negative impact on some of the hairs on the scalp, in particular the hairline, the mid-scalp, and the crown. And what it does to these hairs is it's not the actual hair itself, it's the follicle. Now, there's a misconception.
And the follicle for me, who's not a hair loss expert, so the follicle is the bit that sticks into the scalp, like the bulb.
So the follicle think of the follicle is like, the bulb is different from the follicle itself. So the bulb will sit inside the hair follicle.
Got it.
Okay. And what it is when hair starts to grow, it will come out of the hair follicle, out of the bulb, and the cells will divide on top of each other and literally just like building blocks.
And that's the growth.
That's the growth you see, over time. Now, think of the hair follicle also as being like a little, I guess, funnel for the hair to grow through. And it's what's responsible for the texture of our hair as well. Now, as time progresses, when you're experiencing hair loss and that hair follicle is exposed to DHT, it sort of shrinks and deforms the shape slightly. And as the hair starts to grow, now it won't have its original texture.
Got it.
Okay, so what that can look like is, for someone like myself who's been through hair loss, is the hair wasn't as curly as it was before. It was straighter in nature. And then it will just look thinner, so the texture was affected. And another thing that occurs is the pigmentation changes. So even for myself, it may not be a case of I turned grey, but it didn't have the same sort of luster and the same darkness it had. So these are things to watch out for. And as that happens over time, the hair growth cycle is affected. Okay.
So will it becomes shorter?
Yep. So it becomes shorter. So what particularly the growth phase becomes shorter. So how long your hair actually grows for will now change from maybe being 5 years to 4 years, then 3 years, then 2 years, and then to the point where it doesn't grow anymore.
And then it falls out?
And then what you'll find is, if we're really honest about those who are completely bald, and I used to do this to my father all the time, take a real close look at his scalp, you'll see those little peach fuzz hairs.
Yeah.
So there's still hairs there, but they're not like what we would call terminal hairs.
Okay.
They're called, what hairs are there are called what we referred to as vellus hairs, which
Okay.
are really tiny, small hairs that you would have to look really closely to see.
So we were talking about levels of testosterone, and
Yeah.
we talked about low, mid, high kind of
Yeah.
thing. And we talked about, was it nanomoles?
Yeah.
So what is nanomol?
A nanomol is something that's so tiny. It's literally a billionth of a mole.
Right. Okay.
So it's used as a unit of measurement when we're looking at things within liquids. So for testosterone, it's looked at nanomoles per liter.
And that's in the blood.
Yeah, that's in the blood as well.
Oh, right.
So I mean, if it's kind of funny because when I guess most people will think of it as when we're looking at testosterone, they think it's like we've probably got vials and vials of it running through our body. But if anything, it's just like so tiny.
Unless you're a bodybuilder, and then you probably would have
Vials
vials
of it.
running
That's a
through your
different
veins,
story.
right?
But that's it.
When we're going back to hair loss and thinning hair, DHT is the enemy, right?
Yes, it is.
So if we're trying to do whatever we can to stop DHT on our hair, are there any blockers out there? What can we do? Are there treatments out there that can kung fu kick DHT out of our hair?
I love the term kung fu kick. So I mean, because it's that almost that fight. So I mean, let me park something in terms of something that's actually gonna fight DHT.
Okay.
But what we can do is consider a treatment like minoxidil. Now, the reason why I said, I love the term kung fu kick because minoxidil is a treatment that can almost battle hair loss. Okay. And the reason why I say it battles hair loss is because it doesn't necessarily deal with the cause. However, hopefully it can swing things in your favor in terms of continuing to promote growth. Okay. So what minoxidil does is we refer to it as a vasodilator. And what that means really is...
A what, sorry?
A vasodilator.
A vasodilator.
A
vasodilator,
yeah.
Okay, cool.
So what that means is it increases blood flow to the hair follicles by opening up the blood vessels in and around the hair follicles. Okay. And this increase in blood flow should hopefully mean that your hair follicles get more of the nutrients that they need and the oxygen it needs to thrive. Okay. Now, more importantly, so is it also has an effect on the anagen phase of the hair growth cycle, which is the growing phase, which is the most important phase for you. Now, when someone continues to use minoxidil, the longer they use it for, hopefully it should result in that anagen phase increasing in length and battling, the effects of DHT, which is working to shrink the hair follicle and decrease the length of that growth phase. So it's almost that continual fight. And hopefully, you've got the minoxidil there on your side to continue to promote hair growth, to continue to ensure that your hair stays growing for a longer period so it can get that length and that volume that you want from it.
So if I was looking to find this DHT blocker or the minoxidil, how would I go about getting my hands on it?
So with minoxidil, which is once again to promote growth, not quite block DHT,
Sorry, you're right.
You could get that from your local pharmacy. It's readily available to purchase.
Do you need a prescription for it?
No, you don't. No. So you can get it over the counter in the 5% formulation. It's usually applied twice a day. What's really important to surface is, and I get this all the time when I speak to people, you don't get results overnight. It's a journey, okay? It's really important to understand that it's taken a while for your hair loss to progress. So it's going to take some time for us to look to reverse that process. And that reversal starts with the stabilization of hair loss first. And then we can look to promote growth going forward with the continued use.
So how would I take minoxidil if I wanted to?
Yeah, I think, and this is the clinician in me, I wouldn't say take, because then someone would be like, okay, so do I just swig a bottle and I'm good to go? We don't want them doing that. What I would say is minoxidil 5% is usually applied twice a day.
Okay.
Depending on who you've purchased it from.
Yeah.
That will determine how much you're applying. So it's usually 1 ml applied twice a day.
Is that a spray?
It's usually a spray. However, you can get dropper versions where you can get a little pipette and apply it to the affected areas. It's also available in a foam as well for those people that want to use it. Now, someone may opt for using a foam version in comparison to a solution because In order for minoxidil to stay stable in the solution version, it needs to be coupled together with propylene glycol. Now, now propylene glycol is an alcohol. Okay,
it's alcohol.
Yes, an alcohol. So what that does is it keeps it stable, so you can continue to use it. However, some people who have sensitive scalps may find that when they apply it to the scalp, it causes irritation. Hence why there's a foam version, which is more scalp friendly. Now, what I would always advise is whoever you buy your minoxidil from, just ensure that you read the label on the packaging in terms of dosaging. But 5% is usually applied twice a day in men.
So I've seen a load of amazing sort of before and after hair transformation. Is minoxidil the only thing that's responsible for those?
So minoxidil is not the only option out there in terms of battling hair loss. But unfortunately, I can't talk about prescription-only medications on this platform. However, if you go to the manual website and complete a medical assessment, then we can recommend a suitable treatment to allow you to achieve your hair goals. And at Manual, we're continuing to evolve and level up in terms of our treatments. And there are quite a few things in line for 2024.
So if I'm coming to Manual and I'm getting assessed, what sort of process am I going through for that assessment?
We pride ourselves in having a digital medical assessment where someone can complete an online questionnaire where we would ask you a few questions about yourself in terms of your hair loss, what your goals are, how long you've been losing your hair for. Then we would delve a little bit deeper in terms of, your medical history, and then ask you questions relevant to any potential treatment plans that we may offer to include or exclude you in terms of whether you'll be eligible for them. And then at the end of that, then we would hopefully be able to provide you with some viable options to help you achieve your hair loss treatment goals.
Sounds really comprehensive.
Yeah. We try to make it that way. And even for those who are umming and ahhing about treatment, we have an option for you to schedule calls with our hair loss experts if you want to just discuss a few concerns that you have before even completing a medical questionnaire, so that we can put your mind at rest if you've got concerns about side effects or anything else of that nature.
I was going to say, we're guys, right? Convenience is king.
Yeah.
Like if it's inconvenient, chances of us doing it
is
pretty low, right? So it sounds like you guys at Manual have got things wrapped up.
We're trying our best. I mean, when it comes to when you jump on board with us, we've got many ways for you to get in contact with a clinician. You can get in contact with a clinician through your account. You can WhatsApp us, you can book a call, or you can get patched through by our customer care team. We just try to make ourselves as accessible as possible to provide you that support you need.
Say I've been undergoing treatment for 6 to 12 to 18 months, and it's just, for whatever reason it is, it's just not working. And I think I want to take things a step further. There are other options out there, right? I've heard of PCP, pigmentation, even full-on hair transplant. Uh-huh. Can you give me a little bit more insight into what those things are, what they might look like?
Yeah. So you've mentioned 3 really good options, and there's probably a 4th one there as well that you may, well, I can get onto that. So start off with PRP, plasma-rich platelet therapy. Okay, so PRP. And what that is they would take your own blood, put it in a centrifuge, extract the plasma from
so
it.
They spin it.
Yeah, there you go. So you got to catch me when I start using these scientific words. They spin it, retrieve the plasma, and then they will re-inject it back into your scalp. Okay. Now, evidence shows that this is really good at stimulating hair growth. Okay, and it works in a similar way to minoxidil will as well in terms of the stimulation it provides. With PRP, it's something that you need to do regularly initially. Okay. So depending on what clinic you will go to, they might recommend initial course of 2 to 3 sessions, sometimes 4. And then they would recommend a top up every 6 months. And there are good results in terms of thickening of existing hairs, but not so much regrowth with that. So that's a really good option that's out there. Then you can look at something like scalp micropigmentation, or SMP, which is a really good option. I'll be honest, for me personally, it's probably one of the ones that I may not recommend as much, depending on what you want it for.
Is that a head tattoo?
Yes, pretty much. That's pretty much it.
I was trying to break down what you were saying. I was like, is he talking about tattoo in your head?
This is it. So you can get You can get really good ones.
Okay.
So I've seen people get, a taper fade in terms of a tattoo, and then they're not even worried about hair growth anymore. They just need to make sure that their head's clean shaven, and you won't notice unless you're under bright light. So you start sweating. That's when you can see that actually that might not be hair. But to the naked eye, and if you're just passing someone in the street, you won't see it. But that's one end of scalp micropigmentation. There are other options where someone actually has hair, but what they want is they may want more of a defined hairline. And what they can do is they can just, tattoo in and around the hairline. So on site, it looks like everything's absolutely fine. It looks like everything's growing in unison.
Yeah.
What I can also compare that to is if, some barbers, you can go and you can get the fibers sprayed at the hairline to make it look. It's the same thing, but it's more of a permanent version of that. Okay, so you've got that. So that's SMP. Then you have hair transplants. Now, there's a misconception sometimes, or for some people, that hair transplants are a cure. And once you have a hair transplant, you don't need to do anything else. To an extent, that is true. However, it's really important to understand that when you have your hair transplanted, the hair's transplanted, whether it's, at the hairline or at the crown, the hairs surrounding that are still susceptible to DHT, and we still need to protect it. So when I have people come to me and we have conversations about this and they say, I've had a hair transplant, I no longer need a treatment plan, I turn around and tell them, no, your treatment plan's your insurance policy. On the other hairs. And you don't want to be that person who doesn't use it and then you're trying to go back to your transplant surgeon and say, I need another transplant. And they're like, well, there's not much yet. Oh, it's because we've exhausted all your donor hairs.
So when you're getting a transplant, in order to protect the new hair and the hair that you still have, it's always best to stay on some form of treatment.
Yes, it is. So that's that. And then the fourth option I was talking about is, it's the hair unit. Now, obviously,
the hair unit.
Yeah, or the toupee.
I was going to say, this sounds like a wig.
Yeah, or the wig. But it's nice if some people prefer the term unit. Now it depends on, I guess, who you are in terms of what your preference. If you would actually opt for that, they're getting better and better. And now when people get it on, you can't even tell if they have it, and they're quite robust. Some of them can last from 3 to 6 months, and you wouldn't tell the difference. And they just require some simple maintenance, like you would do if you had a haircut. And so it's actually a viable option for some people who may have experienced more extensive hair loss. And treatment can't really work for them, and transplants aren't necessarily an option. So you can opt for a hair unit or a wig, and it's more of a case of, with a wig you can take it on and off at night time, whereas with a hair unit what they would do is they will have a unit of hair and they would glue it to your scalp, and then they'll just cut around it and blend it into your existing hairs. So you wouldn't be able to tell that it wasn't actually your hair. And then you'll be able to use it, you'll be able to go to the gym, shower with it.
Sounds like an amazing solution. I didn't even know that existed until now.
But it's there. I mean, it's something I know is quite prevalent in stateside, especially in the Afro-Caribbean community, because it's become more of a thing where hair's become something that's more spoken about in terms of people losing their hair. And I think people start to become less, they don't think of it as taboo anymore. I can only speak from my experience as, in the Afro-Caribbean community. The men have almost turned around and said, well, women wear wigs, so why can't we, do this and feel better about ourselves?
And at the end of the day, it's all about trying to make yourself feel confident, happy.
Exactly that.
And if sporting a strong head of hair does that for you, then it's only a win, right?
It. So that's it. And if no one can tell, no one has to know.
So let's end this episode on a real high, and let's circle back to the very question that we asked at the start. Is there going to be a cure for hair loss?
Do you know what? I'm quite confident that the work is being done. And every day, every week, every month, every year, we're getting closer to finding a potential cure. It's just a case of, I think it's a case of when instead of if now. But in the meantime, we do have a number of resources that are available to help us, deal with that problem and just hold the gap until we actually get to that cure.
So there's loads going on in the here and now that can make your life easier today, but keep your ear to the ground, keep yourself educated, because a cure is just around the corner.
Yeah.
So I think we've geeked out pretty hard today on hair loss, what causes hair loss, what a lot of the treatments are.
Yeah.
From a sort of hair loss specialist clinician's point of view, is there anything that I've missed out or any questions that you wish I'd asked you so that when you're on the train home at the end of today, you don't go, I wish you'd asked that?
Do you know what? I think you covered all the bases. I think if someone's going to take anything away from our conversation here today, is one, it's always good to start early, because the longer you leave it, the harder it is to kind of resolve the problem. And I think it's not only true for hair loss, it's true for anything health related.
A load of men's health issues.
Exactly. Two, once you do start a treatment plan, it's all about patience. It's a journey and it's not going to happen overnight. It's really important to remember it took a while to get to this point where you realize you're losing hair, and it's going to take some time to get you back to a place where you're satisfied with your progress.
So thank you so much for tuning in and listening to this first XY episode of the Men's Manual. Massive thank you to Mike for being our resident hair loss expert for the day. And if you guys have any questions, comments, please leave them in the comment section below. As always, please subscribe and like this podcast so that more people can hear it and hopefully benefit from the conversations that are happening today. Stay tuned for our next episode. We have some amazing guests. We're talking about some amazing topics. So thanks for listening. Stay tuned and we'll see you next time.